Welcome back to Benny's Custom Works, proudly supported by Sparesbox. Today we're back on the infamous Blue Sylvia. Got Nath back here helping us again. The goal today is to strip out all the nasty SR and 5-speed, and hopefully by the end of the day we'll have our VH45 and Z32 5-speed back in the car. If we get really lucky, we'll have the tail shaft and the full exhaust system in, but that might be a bonus. So yeah, we'll whack it together and see how we go. But first, we've got to pull all this stuff out. So Nate's going to start on the loom and pull the loom through the firewall while I start pulling stuff apart in the bay. The one complex thing we have to do before we put the VH in is put all the original clutch master cylinder setup from the red car in, because you can't get that master cylinder in there once the VH is in place. The other thing we've got to do before we put the engine in is put the right-hand extractor in, because that goes through the middle of the steering column. So that's not going to be fun either, but we'll get those few bits in. As long as we remember to do those jobs, the rest of the day is going to go pretty smoothly. So let's get straight into it. Nissan junk. No, Nissan's is great. Wonder if it's a disco patatas. Patatas. Gnocchis is pastas, not patatas. About one person in the comments will get that joke. Gearbox oil looks a special kind of cooked. It's not water, kids, don't worry. It's synchros. Some of the most exhausting work I'll do all day. Glad you hung around for that one. Get it? Exhausting, hanging around. Why? Like why?
Because semi-rings.
long as it doesn't sting in your eye. Devil hose. Ah! That's coming back at me. How's that even work? Oh, it must be the fuel filter draining or something. That's in my hair.
It's good to kill all the lice.
I don't have lice.
Oh, now you've got fuel in your hair, no?
Ah, it burns. My scalp is like on fire. It's burning. Make it stop. Every rag I have has probably got gearbox oil in it, so it's like, which do I choose? Urine alkaline. Well, we've got the car ready to go. We've got the engine ready to go. We've just got our last little things to do before we put the engine in, including fitting our new tough mounts. So these are actually BABF XR6 or XR8 Pro Series mounts. So they're the proper shackle style mount bush. So even if the bush is to fail, it still retains the engine. So these are really good for motorsport and pretty tough street cars. When we make our own mounts, we use a very similar style as well. But yeah, Jace at Tough Mounts supplied these for us because they were more or less a direct replacement for what was on it. The ones that were on it though, the bushes themselves had all failed and we couldn't really find a supplier to replace them. So we've got a completely new mount assembly, and now we know we can buy those bushes in the future should we have to replace them. But yeah, we've got basically the engine and transmission are pretty much ready to go in. What we're actually going to do is put the engine and trans in as an assembly. Then we're going to put the transmission crossmember in. Then once that's done, we're going to lift the engine up a little bit higher than it needs to be in the bay. We'll put our right hand header in and we'll put our crossmember under. Once that's all in and bolted in properly, we'll drop the engine down and sit it on the mounts. The one thing we do need to do is slot the crossmember, the engine mount slots are, the bolts on this are 10mm or 11mm, whereas the crossmember from Nissan has 8mm slots in it. So I'll open them up a little bit just with a die grinding burr. But yeah, apart from that, it's pretty much a direct whack in now. So start to bolt it all back together. Then once we've got it all positioned where we want, I'll put the tail shaft and the exhaust on. And then once we're happy with that, we'll start to wire it, but I'd say that's not going to be today. So the goal for today is basically just have the engine and trans sitting in the bay. We might look at the shifter. And yeah, we've got plenty of exhaust and tail shaft stuff to do. So I reckon that'll round out the day. So let's get into it. We've been wrestling for about 2 hours with the engine mounts, and we've finally worked out that one of the plates on the engine was upside down. In our hastiness to replace the engine mounts, we actually flipped one of the engine plates upside down, which then positioned the engine completely wrong. It kicked the left side really high. So by flipping that engine plate back around, we've now got our engine positioned correctly, got our transmission mount buttoned up, everything sorted. So I thought I'd just check our tail shaft length in case there was some funky weirdness going on, because the car this came out of actually had a GTR R200 diff in it. But interestingly, it still had a 4-bolt type flange. So I was like, well, maybe we're half a chance of fitting, and looking at that, it's perfect. The length's good. We've got a little bit of compression on the gearbox end, goes straight into the diff. So it's all just going into place. Finally, we've had a bit of a win today. Like, it's been a massive wrestle getting all that right and in place. So got a cross member in, everything's in. We haven't put our steering knuckle on yet because we've got to put our headers in. Also, we've used the VH45 alternator factory brackets now, which position the alternator slightly different to the previous S13 version of those brackets, which unfortunately puts it into the rail, but the brackets are heaps stronger. So what I think I'm going to do is cut the chassis rail, because this isn't a street car. It's never going to go back on the road. And as we found out today, it's actually already had a ton of front end repairs. So more than likely we'll end up cutting it off at the rails and putting a tube front or something on it later. I'm sure we'll bin it, jump it over a gutter, into a pole. Who knows what's going to happen to this thing, but I'd say more likely than not, it's going to get crashed again at some point. So yeah, next time we'll just lop it off at the rail and just bin the whole front end, and then we'll just build some tubes or whatever. But yeah, for now, we're just going to basically cut the chassis rail and put a flat plate in it to just give it some alternator clearance. And then we're also going to have to cut the lower rad support and the upper rad support to put the radiator in. Also, the radiator that came with the front cut, I'm not too happy with using. It just looks a bit old and crusty, so I want to make a pretty efficient cooling system. VHs do run hot. We're going to run physically the biggest radiator we can in the front, but we're also going to run a supplementary radiator in the boot. So the way we're going to do that is run 2 3/4 lines off the original heater ports. We've got some dash 10 AN bulkheads that we're going to run into the cabin. Then we'll run dash 10 braid the whole way along inside the cabin, and then go to dash 10 all the way to, we're actually going to run a water to air intercooler heat exchanger or radiator. So they just Chinese eBay one. They come with twin fans. They're about $200, and then we can just weld dash 10 AN fittings onto the 3/4 barbs that would normally be there. We'll just cut the barbs off and weld the AN weld on straight to the core. So should give us plenty of cooling capacity and plenty of coolant volume. So that'll hopefully keep it cool on the track. Previously, it also had an electric water pump, but by running that with the old engine, they actually pulled the thermostat out. So I'm going to leave the thermostat in this engine, run the stock water pump, but run the 2 radiators, and then we'll see what happens. If it's still not happy, we'll go back to the electric water pump, but instead of it just being on all the time, we're actually going to control it via the Haltech so that it effectively is its own thermostat. But the other bonus with having an ECU controlled water pump is you can have it on when the engine's not running. So say you do 2 or 3 drift laps and then you come back and sit in the staging lanes, you can just leave it on and it will cycle water while the engine's not running. So if the temp's a little bit warm sitting in the car park, you can just leave it running and cycle water and bring it back down to happy temp before you go back on the track. So all in all, a win, but yeah, it's been a massive mission with those mounts today. So now we've got the shaft in the right spot, pull it out and continue along. Go press back, get royally.
The last thing it saw was